I'm Georgia Williams with the Investing News Network, and we're here at the PDAC convention in Toronto. Joining me today is Brent Cook, Senior Advisor and founder of Exploration Insights. Good afternoon, Brent.
Good to see you.
It's nice to see you too. There's a lot of doom and gloom talk here in the media. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that investors can get excited about?
Yeah, actually, I'm generally not a real positive sort of person on the metals market and gold prices and that sort of thing, but everything I see tells me the price of gold is going to do well over the next 6 months to 3 years. Okay. So if you're into precious metals, I think it looks pretty darn good.
Okay, for the next 3 years.
I think so. I mean, the financial problems the world and the U.S. faces right now are major. The debt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've had an 11-year bull market in major equities. They're rolling over. I think that's going to continue. There's going to be Fed loosening of the money, interest rates coming down. That's positive for gold. We've got elections coming up in the U.S. No matter who wins, the market's going down. Right. It's a setup. I mean, it's going to be rocky, but I'm buying gold stocks for, I'm pretty positive.
And in the mining space, is there anything that we can get excited about for junior miners, or?
It's tougher for junior miners because with the low liquidity in those stocks, they tend not to attract a lot of attention when things are very volatile, and which is what they're going to be. So I think if you're very selective in what you're buying, and you know this company, you know they got enough cash to do the programs that they're expecting, and you have a sense of what its success looks like, call it an exploration program. If you know what needs to happen in the program, you're going to make a lot of money. And that's what Joe and I are doing at Exploration Insights, is we're finding those companies right now, where we have been for a long time, but that we know the projects, what we need to see, and we think we'll be able to do pretty well in those. Because longer term, the mining industry as a whole has not been finding enough metal or deposits to replace what they're mining. So the major mining companies are going to be buying more and more of these.
And so the key really is due diligence. Like, you have to really know the company that you're choosing.
I think so. I mean, to me, in this sector, especially as volatile and risky it is, rule number one is don't lose money. The way not to lose money is to know what you're buying, which takes due diligence. Because most of these projects are going to fail. But if you can identify the fatal flaw ahead of the crowd, you can still make some money.
Right, that's a good tip. In 2019, we saw major activity in the M&A sector. What do you expect for this year?
I suspect we'll see some more. The issue last year it was the big companies for the most part gobbling each other up. And they're trying to get big enough so they're on the radar screen of the major funds, the generalist funds, that sort of thing. I don't see a lot more of that happening. There are individual deposits now that mid to larger companies will be interested in, but it's got to be very specific and fit their goals. It's got to be something that a top of deposit they know how to mine, be it a block cave underground or whatever. It's got to be in a jurisdiction that they're comfortable with, and it's got to fall into their long-range plan, meaning that if they're just finished developing a deposit, their engineers and such are ready to go to the next one. Okay. So it's got to fall in line. So it's got to be very company-specific.
Right. How long do you expect the coronavirus will impact the commodities market?
Honestly, I don't know. Certainly, it's still playing out. It's yet to hit the U.S. I know that it's, you look at the map and there's no reported cases in Africa, India, et cetera, South America, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the case. This is not being reported. So it's still got a long ways to play out. And so I would guess 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Guess.
Yeah. We often hear that investors should diversify. However, in the current landscape, how can an investor diversify while still hedging for a potential downturn?
Well, I assume most of your listeners are probably invested in the general market. So obviously precious metal stocks are a good hedge in what's happening right now. So I would say buy precious metal stocks. Go with, if you don't understand the sector, get some help.
Right.
I mean, if I'm going to get into the biotech sector, for instance, I'm going to get some help from someone who knows biotech. I don't know biotech, so I think it helps to do that. Go with large companies, profitable companies, the high liquidity, that sort of thing.
Right.
Just to get started, and then start looking at the juniors, because that's where you really make money.
Right. And how are you navigating the current market?
Pretty well, as far as I can tell. We'll see what happens next week. On Friday, I stepped in and bought 5 different stocks that had just been hammered. And I think, we'll see what happens. But they're precious metal, gold and silver companies, and Rio Tinto that I see as a long-term solid company. So I stepped in and bought some.
Right. Last week we saw the highest amount of COVID-19 cases and a number of new countries reporting cases. And there was a subsequent gold rise. However, late in the week, the precious metal sector experienced headwinds when there was talks of an interest rate cut. So which ends up being more impactful to gold?
Well, an interest rate cut actually is positive for the gold price because it lowers the value of the dollar. I think the selling we saw on Friday in the gold itself was just liquidation. When people are liquidating and scared, you can always sell gold. You can't always sell, a stock that's not liquid. So we saw a lot of the bigger names that were liquid get sold down. We saw gold get sold down. But for the most part, the juniors didn't get hit that bad because there's no liquidity anyway.
Right. Well, I was at Eric Sprott's presentation earlier today, and he was saying that you don't buy big companies, you buy small market cap companies. And is that your general consensus as well?
It depends on the person. I mean, Eric, that's what he does.
Right.
And, Joe and I, I would say 3/4 of our portfolio are, small market companies under 100 million. But that's where the real risk is. And I think for a general person looking at this market, I would buy the better known names that have some liquidity, show some earnings, free cash flow, that sort of thing.
Right. Why hasn't the positive gold momentum that we've seen translated to growth in the junior stock market?
I think it's because up until now, the general markets, the Teslas, the Apples, Facebook, all those companies have done so well, and it's just a momentum trade, and they keep trading and trading and trading, and all the funds and the algorithms, they're all getting into those great big names, and I think that's probably one reason. Excuse me. The second reason being that the sector itself, until last year, hasn't performed well in terms of making money.
Right.
So it's been a tough one.
Right. So we were speaking a little bit about palladium earlier and how, that's an emerging sector that's doing really well. How can an investor get involved in the junior side of palladium?
It's tough because there's not that many palladium deposits out there. Most are held by major companies. In the letter, Joe just bought Platinum Group Metals, who are developing a platinum palladium nickel deposit in South Africa. So I think that's a good play.
Right.
But there's not that many choices.
And in North America, maybe?
Not really. I mean, there's Lonmin,
right,
Sabine, but there's not that many. I mean, there's smaller companies with plays, but we haven't seen one we feel is good enough to buy yet.
Okay. I think that's some good information to know.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking. That's that's our job. But we have pretty high criteria. It's got to make money.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for joining me today, Brent. It was lovely to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
I'm Georgia Williams with the Investing News Network.